Well, hello, this is Daniel Harkavy, CEO of Building Champions. Welcome to this month's Champions Edge webinar. I am so excited about the moments that we have ahead. For those of you who have been on our webinars and our Champions Edge calls for a long time, you'll recall just a few months ago we had the opportunity to have Dr. Henry Cloud with us. And Henry has a new book coming out next week. And it is by far one of the best leadership books that myself and many of my colleagues here at Building Champions have read. It is fantastic, and it definitely will impact how you as leaders think, and then as a result of how you think, it'll impact your actions and then the results that you get as you lead your organizations, your departments, and your teams. So enough of me. I want to welcome my friend Dr. Henry Cloud to the Champions Edge call. Good morning.
Morning, Daniel. It's good to be here.
Great to have you. Great to have you. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to add value to the Building Champions tribe. I know you've been going like gangbusters, my friend, so it's good to have you with us. We're going to be talking about boundaries for leaders, but before I unleash Henry, I want you to know that there's an opportunity for 5 of you to win an autographed copy of this book. All you need to do is you either need to tweet us or email us your thoughts or learnings from today's call. So if you take something away that you can apply, let us know what that is. Go ahead and tweet us at any time throughout the call or today, and we'll be doing a random drawing, and we'll be getting 5 of you signed copies of Henry's book. It will be released next week. As soon as we get those hard copies here and signed, they will make it into 5 of your hands. So let's go, Henry. Why don't you start us off by giving us just a high-level overview of your most recent book, Boundaries for Leaders.
All righty. You know, probably the highest level is kind of how it starts out. I was sitting with a CEO client of mine who runs about a $20 billion operation, and he looks up at me. This is one of the smartest guys literally I've ever met. And he kind of looked up at me with one of those, the way I describe in the book is one of those expressions that smart people, smart guys get when they think something that even gets their own attention. It's sort of like, whoa. And I said, what? And he said, you know, he said, everybody's out there trying to figure out the right plan. They obsess and worry, and they're always worried about, we've got to get the right plan. He said, in reality, there's 5 right plans. He said, there's 5, 6, or 10 different ways to get there. He said, the problem's not coming up with the plan. The problem is getting the people to do the plan. Mm-hmm. He said, it's always all about the people. And he said, the stuff we're talking about, he said, that's where we need to focus. That's what it's all about. And so what the book is really about is in watching and working with great leaders and looking at what the research says about why they get results, the book is about 7 basic boundaries that great leaders do to make sure that people can work the plan. And Daniel, probably the best way to think about it is that at high levels of leadership, you really pretty much see people in one way doing the same things. You know, everybody that's leading something significant, then they know they got to cast vision, they got to engage talent, they got to execute, they've got to find the future, they got to be a change agent, they got to build critical mass. They know all of this stuff, and they all go do it. Now, why is it that one pile of people get results and another pile of people don't when they're all doing the same thing? And the difference is that they're doing those things in very different ways, and it comes down to basically some leaders are leading people in the ways that people can follow, and some people are leading people in the ways that they can't, and it's all about the way the brain works.
Well, I know as I read through the book, so much of what you share gives the very real clinical support to much of what we do here. And so much of what we do, and a lot of our listeners, what they experience is they experience the lift that comes from gaining clarity on your thinking and then executing on that,
yeah,
and creating a pattern or a structure to execute. And so much of what you talk about in the book has to do with creating an environment where people can think real well and where leaders stay focused on the main things.
Yeah.
And I just love that. There was a lot of great stuff there.
Well, one first boundaries that it talks about is creating the kind of focus that makes the brain work specifically in 3 ways. You know, for anybody's brain to get them from A to Z. If you're going to accomplish any goal, if you're going to make a vision happen, if you're going to accomplish a strategy, if you're going to accomplish a goal, your brain is hardwired to be able to do that, okay? It ought to work. Now, here's what it's got to do to work. It's got to do 3 things, and there are physical structures in the brain that do this. Number 1, it's got to attend to what is relevant. Okay, if you're driving your car from here to 7-Eleven, and that's your goal, your brain has got to attend to a handful of relevant inputs that will be able to organize all your efforts to get there. Oncoming traffic, what's my speed, did I just hit the brake, is there a turn coming up, who's that in the next lane, I got to look in my rearview mirror. So there's this set of stuff that if your brain must have that in front of it in order to get there. The second thing your brain's got to do, besides attend, is it's got to inhibit everything else. So it's got to shut out everything that's not relevant. You can't be texting, you can't watch a video, you can't have somebody screaming at you, and it's got to be able to get away. Now the third thing is it needs something called a working memory. And what a working memory is I can't just drop you out of a time machine into the car and you wouldn't know what to do next because you don't know what you just did. You don't know if you stepped on the accelerator or the brake, and you don't know what's next. So it needs a working memory. Now, translated to leadership, what happens is that leaders in teams and with their companies and even with themselves, they're not leading with the executive functions of the brain in mind. They're not leading in a way that gets people attending to what's relevant, blocking out everything else, and keeping it current in front of them all the time. And that's not just something you do in one conversation or in a meeting. It is a leadership style. Now, let me give you a great example. One company I worked with had one office that kind of beat everybody in the country, you know, pretty much every year, year after year after year. This one office did about 80 or 90 million a year in revenues, and it was led by this one guy who was always a superstar. And so they wanted me to go watch him and to find out what is it this guy does that everybody is not doing. And when I met him, I literally thought I was looking for Einstein, but I ran into a junior high football coach. That was his personality. Smart guy, but he kind of had that coach sort of thing going about him. And so I just started kind of watching what he did, learning what he did, and finding out, you know, why is this working and what's replicable. And one of the things he did was one of my favorite practices, and that is he had the daily morning meeting. And what he would do is every morning, all of his salespeople, he would bring them together, and they would have a 15-minute or 20-minute meeting. And he would do a couple of things. He'd say, okay, here's a tip about, you know, a new product or the market or the customers. He'd give them some kind of information that was really relevant of what they were pushing right then. The second thing he would do is he would get 4 or 5 people to share a big win that they had yesterday. You know, what went well? Did you close a deal? Did you, you know, some kind of victory? And then the third thing he would do is he would point out one of those, and he'd say, okay, I want to interview you. And he would start to ask them, how did it happen? So how'd you first get the lead? Well, what'd you do then? Did you follow up immediately? Did you call them? Did you go visit them? Did we help you from the home office? Did we use outside consultants to come help you make the presentation? Did you have any objections? Did you have to work with their partners? And really find out what was relevant, you know, to what happened. And then after they shared that so everybody could see how a deal gets done, then the next thing he would do is he'd say, okay, anybody got a challenge today, put it up there and we'll all pipe in. All right, now in that daily meeting, what has he done? He's gotten people's brains attending to what is relevant to drive the business, blocking out everything else, and he's creating a working memory day after day that what's relevant is always in front of them, always in front of them. And that is one of the big reasons he got results.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I've talked about building champions. What you guys do is you sit down with people and you make their executive brains function again. And basically, it's like treating an ADD kid, right? This is ADD, attention deficit disorder, is really about we're overstimulated, you know, by too many things, and we can't focus. And you got to add that kind of structure that you guys do in your coaching process that really helps the brain get working again.
Now, there's, what we've seen with so many of our clients, and we experience it ourselves. I know you and I experience it as well as business leaders. There's just so many opportunities. There's so many daily crises, and if you don't have long-term strategy, you don't have something to focus on, then it's very easy to continually shift and change gears.
Right.
It's so difficult for our teammates to follow us if we're not locked on to one major or two major initiatives in a period of time.
It's exactly right. I'll give you a great example. When, you know, Apple was basically about done. They were dying, and they were just kind of irrelevant, and had basically gone away when they called Steve Jobs to come back. And he said when he went back, what he found was that there were 30-something versions of the Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would go learn about all these Macs, and then he would walk around, he'd scratch his head, and he would ask people, okay, so if I want to tell my cousin to buy one, which one does he buy? And there were just, you know, all of this, like, just so much stuff. And so one day he's standing in a meeting, and he screams, this is crazy. And he walks over to the board, and he draws a 2x2 matrix. And across the top he puts professional, personal, and professional. One of the boxes is or columns is personal, the other's professional. Down the side, he puts portable and desktop. So that you end up with 4 blocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got a personal and professional portable and a personal professional desktop. He says, that's what we're going to do. We're going to make 4 computers, and that's it.
Mm.
And his biographer writes, the room went silent. And the silence was, he had plugged in their executive functions of their brain again,
Yep.
where they could attend to what's relevant, inhibit what's not. He kept that in front of them, and now you go in an Apple store, you're going to see 4 computers. That's it.
Yeah, that's a great story and a great example of how it works. You know what I want to do? So much of what we've been talking about with our clients over the past few years has to do with self-leadership. And I'm going to jump to that because, Henry, people will come to us and they'll want to improve their overall organization's execution or their overall organization's performance. And oftentimes the leader will want to focus on mobilizing his or her teammates. And what they oftentimes have to realize is they themselves have to make the improvement first in how they think and how they're operating. And we work with them on gaining clarity first and foremost because we believe self-leadership always precedes team leadership. So why is a leader without such self-boundaries, why are they a threat to the overall success of the organization, and what role does self-leadership play?
Well, here's the problem. You know, the higher you go in leadership, by definition, the less you are being led, right?
Right.
If you're the CEO, you're pretty much not being led by anybody. You answer to a board generally, and what that board does is they're a good board, they're a policy board,
right,
not a managing board, and so they set parameters, and you are free to go accomplish a vision and strategy within that. So nobody's leading the leader. So when you think about that, then somebody better lead that leader, and there ain't nobody to lead that leader but that leader. And so that there's so much even neuroscience behind this, because what happens is leaders that go work and they go lead and they go drive things and this, that, and the other, but they are not getting above themselves to observe themselves, then they are in trouble. You know, basically, Daniel, the difference between us and a German Shepherd is a German Shepherd barks, but doesn't really ever ask, so how's my barking? You know, am I bothering you guys? Is it the right pitch? Is it too frequent? Am I causing disturbances? Could I do it better? They just bark. Now, they'll stop to yank their chain, but they don't really ask, how am I doing? And a lot of leaders are basically German Shepherds. They're just out there doing the deal, and they don't get above it to do an observing capacity. And what happens to the brain when you begin to observe what you're doing, you know, it's sort of like the Bible says, observe your ways, you know, look at your patterns and look at all this stuff, and you get above it, and then we can take pictures of people's brains, and when you begin to pay attention to what you're doing from an observing space and with someone else, actual new circuitry begins to grow in the brain from the process of paying attention to what you're doing and leading yourself. And new circuitry ends up in new behaviors.
I want to jump in here because I want to make sure everybody's hearing this. Yes, that was incredibly specific for all of you CEOs. Absolutely. There is a lesson in that for anybody on the call that's department manager, that plays some level of mid-level manager, somebody's managing one person or 10 folks. The lesson in this is that the best leaders have arrived at a place of maturity to where they're very comfortable knowing that they don't need to have all the answers. And they're hungry for that input. They're hungry to understand how they impact those around them so that they can adjust and grow. And so much of what we do in coaching, so much unraveling of problems or opportunity to grow individuals comes from when the leader realizes that they no longer need to pose and act like they have all the answers, because that just retards your leadership influence and your growth. So I just wanted everyone to hear that. There's a great level of leadership maturity that you take when you come to grips with the fact that you don't need to have all the answers. You shouldn't have all the answers. If you do have all the answers, then you're the smartest guy on the team and you're in trouble.
Well, if you do have all the answers, you're either psychotic or you're not doing much.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to have all the answers if all you're doing is sitting in a corner counting a dozen marbles and putting them into stacks of 4.
Yeah, no doubt.
But once you start to get out there, out over your skis and do something that's never been done before, to the revenues, to the top line, to the innovation, to the opening up new markets, to whatever it is that's by definition never been done before for you or your company or yourself or even the world, that's what leading is. And if it's never been done before, guess what, Bubba? You don't have all the answers. And it might have been done before, but you've never done it before, and that's where somebody does have an answer. And so one of the self-boundaries that I talk about in that chapter is the great leaders set a very firm boundary on their own isolation. And by isolation, I don't mean hiding in a cave. What bad leaders do is they have a wall around their heart, mind, soul, and strength. And they keep their own counsel, and they say it's lonely at the top and a bunch of stuff like that, and they don't open up the system to new energy and new information, and they're just headed for, you know, where did Saddam Hussein end up? In a hole in the ground by himself.
Yeah. Yeah. So that open system for thinking versus closed system for thinking and getting that input, why don't you speak on that just for maybe 30 seconds to a minute or so, and then I'm going to jump to the next question.
Okay. Basically, it's kind of like the laws of physics. You know, everybody's heard of the law of entropy, and what entropy means is that disorder and running down of energy increases over time. So if you have anything, it's sort of like the earth is winding down, or the best example is just leave your toddler at home alone for a weekend and see if that system doesn't get more disordered and run out of energy. Okay? But that law only applies to closed systems. If you open up the system and bring in new sources of energy and new information or structure or a template to organize that energy, then you can reverse disorder and chaos and make it into something incredible, and you can turn around any kind of downward spiral. And so what the great leaders do is they don't operate like a closed system until they start to run down and then kind of open up at the end and call 911. They operate as an open system. Now, the easiest example of that I know is your computer. If your computer is online, hooked up to whatever it is that's updating it, whether it's your operating system or the software you use or whatever it is, what you'll see is the server, from Apple or Microsoft or Norton or whoever you need updates from, the server reads it, it looks at it and goes, oops, you need this, and they download that on an ongoing basis. Now, what happens to your computer when you take it offline and you go on a trip or you don't use it for a while or whatever it is, and all these updates have happened in the world of change around it when it hasn't been an open system for a month? Then the thing crashes, or it's got viruses, or it can't operate with the rest of the world. And that's why a leader has got to be an open system that's continually getting energy and updated and defragged and devirused.
All right, so I'm going to give this a real specific action plan for all of you, because I know many of you are not being coached. An open system strategy is that you have a coach speaking into your life, into your business, and helping you to assess, to gauge, to correct, to move, to think bigger, to accomplish more. But that's not for everybody. There are other ways for you to have open systems. You can have an advisor. You can have an advisory committee. You could have an accountability partner. You can have open structure with your team to where maybe once a month or once a quarter you have your team assess what you need to keep doing, start doing, and stop doing. A simple KISS, keep doing, start doing, and stop doing, so that you can improve how you lead. The main thing that Henry's talking about here is you've got to continually welcome and be proactive with how you get outside input so that you can improve. Henry, let's talk about, as a leader, how you can help motivate your employees and to create a culture that delivers even better results.
Well, motivation is kind of everything, right, in a certain sense, in that just listen to the word motivation. It comes from motive and motion. And we talk about motion, it's basically movement, and that's what leaders want to do. And what we know about the way the brain marshals the forces to get people moving, to get them creative, to get them to solve problems, to get them to lean into things, to get them to persevere, to not quit, to figure it out, all the different things that do that. There are a handful of boundaries really that leaders can do to create. Now we've mentioned the first one, which was the focus one, but let's go past that. The next one that is really, really important is that the leaders have got to set boundaries that limit destructive thinking paradigms from taking root in teams or people or departments or even the whole organization.
Yeah.
The leader is the steward of the thinking paradigms that are going on. And what happens is you get in a bad market, or you get in some circumstance where things are affecting you that are outside of your control, like the home office or the board or the parent company or the regulators or the FDA or the SEC or whatever it is, and things are affecting your business that are outside of your control. Well, the literal thinking software in people's heads begins to change. And it goes from, the simple way to think about this is it goes from an optimistic style to a pessimistic style. And the pessimistic style does three things. It interprets any event in a personalized way. Like if I don't make the sale, it goes personal. Well, it's because I'm not, I'm not good enough. What made me think I could lead this? Or what made me think I could do deals like other people do? Or what makes me think our company, the company is we're not as big as the rest and we don't have the resources they do. There's some way that event gets personalized and everybody starts to think negatively about themselves or the product or the company. The second P is it goes pervasive. Well, it's not just this product. Really, our whole product line just, it's kind of, it's not just my business. Really, it's my life. I mean, everything, and the whole thing goes bad. And so the chemistry turns into sewage water in the brain because now we're in this everything's bad sort of funk. And then the third P is permanent, that they start to feel like, well, it's not going to be any better next quarter. It's not going to be any better next quarter. It's not going to be any better tomorrow, the next call I make. And once that thinking starts to take root, and then it goes to a powerlessness and a helplessness, the brain literally shuts down in its initiating and it's taking control of what it can control to drive results, and it begins to just kind of stall out. And leaders must be the stewards of thinking. And they got to listen for it, and they got to drive it, and they got to message it, and they've got to get people to an optimistic, and I don't mean la-la land, I mean optimistic thinking, a different way of thinking that if that sale doesn't happen, what an optimist does is they treat it as an event, not as some big reality of the state of life. They go, okay, we didn't sell, let's unravel it. Why didn't we make the sale? Because we need to improve our presentation, or we didn't get to the close fast enough, or we didn't know enough about the customer, or maybe the customer didn't need it. But they treat it as a problem to be solved, and then they go attack it, and they solve it. Why is that optimistic? Because there's a basic belief that it can be done. See, if I solve the problem, that means that I really believe that this can be done. And what the empirical research shows is the number one factor that loads on whether or not someone accomplishes a goal. Now, there's multiple factors, but the number one factor is the belief that they can accomplish it.
Absolutely.
Number one. And when you get people into the three Ps and they start thinking powerlessly, helplessly, or negatively, you're done.
Yeah.
And don't let that take root in your organization. I don't know if y'all know Jimmy Blanchard or not. He was the CEO of Synovus. And if you watch the Masters, he's the ball-headed guy that stands on the first tee and says, and now on number one tee, we have Mr. Tiger Woods. Well, that's Jimmy. And Synovus was ranked the best place to work, I think it was by Forbes, for like 10 or 20 years. Finally, they asked them to stop entering the contest because nobody else could win in the Fortune 500. And so what Jimmy said one day was, he said, well, I had a rule at my company, and that was if you wake up in a bad mood, then you take a sick day and don't bring that to the office because we don't want to get infected with it.
I tell you, that is, Henry, that is such a very practical and powerful lesson for everybody on the call to hear. It is hard enough to go out there and win at business when we're just fighting the outside challenges and the competitors and the challenges that come with the commoditization of certain service industries, etc. It's so difficult on the external. We cannot afford to be fighting those types of mental demons on the inside of our team. So thanks for bringing that up, buddy. There is so much here that I know you could unpack that would be of tremendous value to our listeners. And that really is just going to lead me to inviting everybody on the call to join you on Thursday, April the 17th. There's going to be a simulcast that Henry's going to be leading. You can look on the screen now, boundariesforleaders.com. And I would just encourage you to join Henry. He's going to unpack the book, and there's just going to be a whole bunch of great learning for you. So if you've enjoyed what you've heard here,
and Daniel, they can watch it individually, but they can do it with their teams, or they can put it up on the big screen and do it for entire organizations or communities or whatever. And it'll be a live event I'll be doing there from North Carolina, and it'll be up on the big screen. And if they buy it, you know, it's really cheap, it's like 30-something bucks, like the price of a book basically, and you get a book. But they'll be able to view it in the archive for, it's either a week or two after that.
Great. Well, I want to encourage everybody, add this to your self-development, your learning plan. I got big news for all of you. Henry's going to be joining us out at Sun River. So if you're going to be coming to the experience, this will be the 6th Annual Building Champions Experience, September 17th to the 20th. You want to spend some more time with Henry, he'll be there along with Donald Miller and the team of coaches here. We are really looking forward to a fantastic few days together. So Henry, that's exciting. You guys also need to know that we're talking right now, Henry and I have been working on the possibility of doing some work around Boundaries for Leaders, to where we'll be able to provide you with some coaching around that in some live venues. So we're working on that. Stay tuned. More to come in the months ahead. If you learned something today and you're going to be able to apply it, let us know. You can tweet it. You can email us. We're here to answer those questions and listen to that feedback. So feel free to shoot your thoughts to us. Henry, any final thoughts before we let everybody get back at it?
Well, the final thought is this. You know, if you're on this call, that means that you have the brains and the talents and the abilities and the position to go accomplish whatever it is you want to accomplish, or you wouldn't be there. You know, there's a selection process, gates that you have to get through to be selected for whatever you're doing. So you already have the stuff. So what we find is there's a difference in the group of people with the stuff that get results and the group of people who also have the stuff that don't get results. And it really is about learning the leadership patterns that make you break out of the pack and different than everybody else that's got the stuff. And so that's what I would encourage you to keep doing, your growth and development, because that's what's going to pay off.
Excellent, man. Well, thanks for your investment of time. I think you all heard Henry. There were some definite instructions there. Don't be the leader with ADD. Don't be the German Shepherd that barks and doesn't hear yourself. And don't waste the stuff. 3 light things for each and every one of you as leaders to make sure you're focusing on. If you want any more information from Building Champions, info at Building Champions. You can Facebook, follow us on Facebook, or get your thoughts to us on Twitter. Henry, thanks a ton. I am so looking forward to your book, Boundaries for Leaders, making a significant difference in millions of leaders' lives. And that book will be out next week. It's the 16th, right, Henry?
Yep, it's on Tuesday, but you can pre-order it now, or it'll come with a simulcast if you get that.
Buy it, folks. You will definitely be glad that you did and that you read it. All right, Doc, thank you very much.
Okay, good to be with you.
And all you followers of the Champions Edge webinars, we hope this added value. Thanks for making the investment of time and joining us today. Have a great day.